This meeting is being recorded.
Hello and welcome to the Rock Files podcast with your host, Mark Chatterton. On today's show, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Nick Garner, who is known locally here in Essex as a promoter at the Chelmsford Social Club. Yet Nick has also had a wide-ranging career in the music business, both as a musician, roadie, journalist and manager. Along the way, he has crossed paths with the likes of David Bowie, Ozzy Osbourne and Ginger Baker. So I'm sure Nick will be able to tell us plenty of stories of his many years in the music industry. So welcome to you, Nick.
Hello, welcome.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
Right, thanks very much for agreeing to do the interview, because I know you've had a very long career in the music industry. What about your early days? What were your influences, and were people in your family into music and stuff like that at all?
My elder brother was a bit, but they weren't so much into what I was into. My sister got into the likes of Pink Floyd and that, but I liked all types of music, more on the rock side. I think when I was younger, I did like the Beatles and the Stones.
Yeah.
So I was one of those who sat on the fence and that. And I was lucky where I lived, there was a lot of musos, so I got to know a lot.
Yeah, because you were brought up in Bromley in Kent, is that right?
Yes, well, a small place called Coney Hall, just outside of Bromley, near West Wickham, is where I grew up as a child.
Right.
In fact, listening to the radio today talking about the weather, we lived in a valley, and yes, our schools did not close, and but we couldn't get out of where we were because the buses couldn't get up the hills.
Right. Yeah. And is it been snowing in Chelmsford where you are at the moment then?
It has, but I call it just a fluttering, because I was around in 63, which is still recorded as being the coldest winter for 200 years.
Right.
And,
yeah.
And I remember that we built igloos in our front gardens and as well. You know, the ice was it was about a foot or two thick on the pavement. You know, that was proper snow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. Well, getting back to the music side of things, that I know you were involved in sort of the early Bromley scene, and you came across David Bowie and Arthur Brown, amongst others, and Julie Driscoll. Can you tell us a little bit about those days?
Yes. Well, that's because that was more of the Beckenham side of things. I did live in Bromley and I lived in Beckenham. But when I was in Beckenham, I did share a flat with Arthur Brown, which was after the Crazy World days, just after Kingdom Come. Arthur lived there, the same as we knew David from the Arts Lab in Bromley, in Beckenham, where he was starting out at the Three Tons pub. And there was Peter Frampton, of course. Peter's dad was David Bowie's art master at school, and the first band was the two of them together. So it was... Yeah, we were all musicians, but back in the early days, there was more money being a roadie than being a musician. So hence I became a roadie and guitar roadie. And and we used to have great fun. Great fun. Great knowing these guys who were lucky to be in the right place at the right time to make it. There are plenty of others I know who were fantastic as well, who should have made it but didn't.
Yeah, that happens such a lot, doesn't it? So who were you a roadie for in those days back then?
I suppose my first proper band that I roadied with was Gallagher and Lyle, because they were living in Bromley and Beckenham, Graham and Benny, and yes, I knew them. This was just after they'd finished with Apple and that, because they were the first songwriters signed to Apple.
Yeah,
and yes, and they were in a long wheelbase transit. They were good friends, and then when they stepped up with A&M Records, they knew me. We were all good friends, our families, and they asked me if I'd like to be their guitar roadie. So hence, that is where it all started, and did quite a few tours with them in the 70s and that across the UK and Europe.
Yeah, so you did all over Europe as well as the UK. So you did a lot of miles, etc. And Getting before that, were you're a musician as well? Because I know you play the guitar and the harmonica.
Yeah, I started the guitar, I suppose, when I was about 7.
Yeah.
And that I had a couple of lessons, but yes, I still play my guitars every day. I don't know any covers. I only play my own stuff, and I don't play in a standard tuning a lot of the time. I was influenced by friends who showed me different tunings, and people like John Martin and that, who used a lot of unusual tuning. So it's experimenting with it. And then the harmonicas, I suppose I started in my teens, but in my later years, I became more and more and played it professionally with lots of people. I've been fortunate to join a lot of people on stage. In fact, last night I was playing with some friends, the One Tree Hillbillies. I enjoy both.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I know also that you had connections with people in Bromley with the up and coming punk scene, with like Siouxsie and the Banshees and stuff like that, I think.
Yes, because they called it the Bromley Contingency. We were a little bit older than them, but I knew there was Siouxsie Sioux, Billy Idol, Adamant, Max Splodger's Splodgeness Abounds, and always remember the story of Siouxsie coming in saying, "All be in this pub on a Friday evening at 5:30, which was near a Beefeater, which is where often people like our parents used to go on a Friday to treat themselves to a steak dinner and that. So we were all in this pub, standing at the bar waiting, and in walks Siouxsie, the first time we'd seen her, with all her hair spiked right up and all this black makeup, and with this friend of ours on all fours with a collar and lead round his neck. And she walked up to the bar and said, "I'll have a pint of lager and a pint of water for my dog, please," in a bowl. Yeah. And they looked and laughed and said, no. So she got one of us to get some water. She put it in an ashtray, a clean ashtray, I will stress, and she put it on the ground. So he was lapping that while she drank her lager. And it was more for the shock thing, watching the other people, the older people like our parents, who now I would be older than, looking in what the heck is this all about? And that's where it was all really starting. Yeah, they were good fun times. No harm meant or malice meant. No. It was just good fun and trying to shock a bit.
Yeah.
Rebellion.
Did you go to any punk concerts or anything like that, or were you just, because you're a bit older, you weren't really into that scene at all?
No, I did some work with the Damned. Friends of mine were the road crew for the Clash. Yeah. I knew the Jam. Friends of mine worked with them, so I was around it quite a bit, because I worked with Toyah. Just after that, I worked with Toyah and Hazel O'Connor. And a friend of mine was JJ Burnell's Minder, and that. So did some stuff with the Stranglers and that. So I was in and around it all, and it was all good times.
Yeah, because obviously back then the music scene was changing all the time, really, and it was evolving and sort of growing, I suppose. Would you agree?
Yeah, it needed a bit of a kick up the backside. The prog had been sort of taking over more, and that, which I enjoyed at the time. But now when I listen to some of it, I think, oh, that sounds a little bit self-indulgent, some of that.
Yeah, sure.
So yes, to me, punk was like raw rock and roll.
Yeah.
And it was something that the music industry needed. And I think the British punk was a big influence around the world, the likes of the Pistols and, say, the Damned, the Clash, and all of these bands, and Siouxsie, of course, and Billy Idol, Generation X. And that, it was fun times, but the music industry needed that. And I tend to think we maybe need something like that a bit again now. Yet there are some good original creative artists coming through.
Yeah, sure. Getting back to your days as a roadie, was that sort of all the way through the 70s you did that, or into the 80s as well?
Oh yes, well into the 80s. I worked with Ginger Baker, and that went in the early 80s, and that my friends put a band together with him, Ginger's Nutters. and that, and also working with Hazel O'Connor in those days. We actually did the first festival in Ireland with Hazel O'Connor in Southern Ireland at Slane Castle. The headline act. The headline act was Thin Lizzy, and the Pope had been there a few weeks before, so we used the same stage as the Pope over the lake. And then so it was Thin Lizzy, Hazel O'Connor, this new up-and-coming Irish band called U2 or something, Rose Tattoo and various other people. But they changed it later to make it look like U2 were the penultimate band, but they weren't. Hazel O'Connor was.
Right.
Definitely, because I was there. And remember, Bono, when they were on stage, he kept getting Hazel to come up on stage to sing with him as well. Yeah. It was a good, fun day.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah.
And then I ended up in Spain working with Spain's biggest heavy rock band. And we came back over Baron Rocco. We came back to the UK, we came to the UK and toured with Hawkwind and did Reading and that. And then we went to Venezuela. And I remember we played in Caracas. It was the biggest band to play there, to the biggest audience since Van Halen. And we played it because us as the road crew were all musicians, and we used to do the sound checks. And in the Latin countries, for some reason, the audience is generally in when you're sound checking. Yeah. The band made us go out and sound check at this. And we played 2 nights running to 125,000 people, which is like the equivalent of 1.5 Wembley stadiums a night.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic doing a bit of AC/DC and that, and seeing all these people loving it and enjoying it. So, and I carried on with various other bands during the 80s and that, and various other gigs and that, until I dropped away from music for a few years. Then I moved up here to Essex, where I've been, say, in Europe and all over London, and that I moved up to Essex and started playing with a band a bit. We were on the pub scene and various things like that, and then I moved up to Chelmsford round about 98, I think it was. And I was still doing a bit of playing. I ended up joining a friend of mine, Jamie Williams, at the time, and playing in his band for over 10 years. And I started putting some shows on here. I started doing blues events, regular things at a place called The Basement.
Yeah.
And then I grew to doing putting festivals on, but I was very fortunate because of my contacts and the people I knew from the music from the past and everything. A lot of people were willing to come and play for me because they knew I would take care of them, because I'd tour managed and everything in the past, and I know how to look after people.
Yeah, sure.
So I was lucky. I had great people like Els Bailey, Willie and the Bandits, Del Bromham from Stray, John Verity from Argent, and various people all playing for me in pubs and different places. I was fortunate. I think it was 2011 that I put on Jack Bruce, the last time he played a set of Cream material with some friends of mine before he sadly passed away. I remember him. He said to us, "Here's a mini version of my bass that I've been giving. You can auction that if you want for the charity," because I always did the festivals for charity. I wasn't interested in making money. I just wanted to bring good live music to people. And he said, "You might get £100 for it or something." We ended up, I think it was getting about £800 for it. And I said to him afterwards, I said, "The guy would like to have a photo taken of you with him with the guitar." He said, "For that money, I would strip off naked." I remember him saying he was, and it was great because Andy Frazier turned up that day as well. Because my friend Bill Leesergang. Now, Bill Leesergang goes back to the early Beckenham days. Bill and I go back 50 odd years. He was actually David Bowie's best friend, and David used to play him all his material. Then Bill's played with lots of metal bands and German punk artists, and that he's played with loads and loads of people and used to play with Jack. but he was teaching Andy Fraser's protege at the time. So Andy was over from LA and turned up. I said, would you like to go and say hi to Jack? And the funny thing is, they had never met before.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I have the only photograph of the two of them together, and they were both very complimentary of each other, saying to each other, I wish I'd have written that song. I wish, to each other.
Mm.
And that, which was great.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. And nowadays, apart from all you promoting, you're involved with an up and coming guy called Connor Selby. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yes. Well, it's two of them really, Connor Selby and Joe Anderton. Joe's about a year older, and I remember Joe, there used to be a blues jam down in the basement.
Yeah.
I remember Joe coming along saying he'd been to the basement the night before, said, can I come to the jam? They said, how old are you? He said, I'm 18 today. They said, well, yes, you can, because you have to be 18 to come in. And he came along, and Laura, who ran the jams with Jamie Williams, said, Mum, you're going to get up and play? And so her mum got up and played, and Joe was up there playing. And I said to Joe afterwards, do you know who that was you were playing with? He said, no. I said, Siouxsie Quattro. And she loved Joe's playing. And then about a year later, when Connor was of age, he came along, and they were both playing with Siouxsie and loved it. But then when B.B. King died, I thought, we can't just let this pass. So within a few days, I organised an event to happen in the basement, and I had people from all over come along to play. One being John Altman. John Altman, a great sax player, musician, producer, conducted the Royal Philharmonic, won Grammys, Emmys and everything, and was also a friend and had played with BB. And while he was there, he called up to America and called BB's best mate, who was his bass player, and said, we're about to do this jam session, this tribute for BB, and couldn't believe he had this guy on the phone. And Joe and Connor were there both playing with a lot of people, loving it. And I said, you two should be together. You need to be, because Connor, great player, great singer, but was not that forward on the stage, where Joe started off like that, but he'd become very vocal and entertaining. So I put the two of them together, first of all acoustically, but then when Connor's guitarist left his band, I said, get Joe in. You need Joe in the band. And that must be about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And now you can't separate the pair of them.
Yeah, sure.
They are best friends. They play together a lot. They write together. And Connor, I'm very proud to say, is really moving up, having opened at Wembley Stadium for the Who in 2019. And then this year, having opened Hyde Park, the Big T events for Pearl Jam as well. And he's been opening for Joanne Shaw Taylor on a few shows this year, solo. But he's got some big news coming for next year. He's also now a signed artist, so he has a record label. He's going to be re-releasing his Connor Selby album from last year again, but with 4 bonus tracks on it, which are also being released as singles. So yeah, I'm really proud to have been involved with his and their evolution, because they're still very grounded guys. They haven't lost where they have come from and the respect for the people who helped them along the way.
Good, because I've heard quite a lot about them, and it's nice to know a little bit about the background, and they're definitely ones to watch out for in the future, certainly.
Yeah, well, he has a world-class band round him now. With the keyboard player, the bass player, the drummer, and that's who are all hired hands, but play with him all the time. And him and Joe, in fact, they played for me just the other Friday. It was our Christmas show. And we had 100-odd people there. It should have been packed, because the way they played was just astounding. It was incredible.
Yeah, because your shows at they used to be at the football ground, didn't they, at Chelmsford Football Ground? And now you moved to the social club, and you've had quite a few big names on there recently and coming up, because I know you had Eric Bell originally of Thin Lizzy, and you had
He's back next year.
Yeah, okay, and Robbie McIntosh and Hamish Stewart of Average White Band, and so you tell me a bit about the people you've got coming up then for next year.
Yeah, well, we do it under the name of Black Frog Presents. That is my thing that I set up with a late friend of mine, Vicky from the Delta Ladies. So yes, everything's done. And Black Frog is a thing that's run by musicians, for musicians, without the corporate rip-offs, basically. Right. All of us involved, or most of us involved, are musicians, and I have a great team around me. And yeah, we're kicking off next year on the 20th of January with 9 Below Zero, which have been friends for a long time. And yeah, we've been trying to arrange this for ages, and we got this all together, which is fantastic. And then we got a band, the Orbison Project, who do Roy Orbison, the best you will ever hear. And that most of them come from another great tribute band, the Trembling Wilburys. Who are regarded as the best, with Diesel on guitar, who is a complete legend. Then we got the Overtures in March. The Overtures, described by Elton John as the best band of their type. They are a covers band, but they played Elton John's wedding. They played Lulu's 60th. They've played for Paul McCartney. They've had the likes of Robin Gibb singing with them, and lots of other people. They've been going for over 30 years. Not normally the sort of band I put on, but they are so good at it. That I just felt I had to put them on. And then I've got a great pairing again, who met at one of my one-day festivals in the basement. We got Del Bromham of Stray, where Del started that when he was 13, and Del's the same age as me now, 69. So, and Stray is still going today. And then John Verity from Argent. So they've got the Verity Bromham Band, which is, they're going to be doing a lot of their favourite rock covers and some of their own stuff as well. I expect you'll hear a bit of Argent and a bit of Stray in there as well, which is going to be great. And then we have another wonderful one coming up at the beginning of March. We've got Martin Turner. The man, he has to go down as ex-Wishbone Ash, but to me, he is Wishbone Ash. He was the voice. He wrote a lot of the music. So really, really looking forward to that. And then we got Some Kind of Wonderful, which is a celebration of the music of Stevie Wonder, with Derek Nash, who is the main sax player, with Jules Holland, and Noel, who used to be the front man for Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and they are brilliant. Then we have got, you mentioned earlier, Eric Bell is returning.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't say no to Eric. He was so good last year.
I was.
And then the week after that, another great, I think. A lot of people don't know him and realise, but he's called Chris Jagger. Most people will know his brother Mick. And they do stuff together. And Chris has been performing about as long as Mick has. And then opening for them, I've got another great friend who used to front a band you may or may not remember, the Fabulous Poodles. From the 70s, 80s. Tony Demure is going to be opening for them, because Tony and I go back to those Beckenham Bromley days. Then we got Voodoo Room, who celebrate the music of Clapton, Hendrix and Cream their own way. Then we got Who's Next. Then we got the Julie July Band and Dandelion Charm. The Julie July Band are a folk rock band and are amazing, and half their show is going to be a tribute to Sandy Denny, and you will not hear a finer tribute to them. And then they will be playing their own music. Then we have Noasis returning for us, and then another great band I've known for years, and we've been trying to arrange something for a long time, and at long last we got the Band of Friends, Jerry McAvoy and Brendan O'Neill from Rory Gallagher. Of course, Jerry goes back to Taste with Rory. And this is a celebration of the music of Rory, which is going to be great. And then my first reggae show, the Mooch we've got coming up. And then our annual return with Albert Lee. Albert and I go back, dare I say, about 50 years. Albert's been playing for me for about the last 6 years. And then we have Totally Blondie and the Small Fakers playing as well. But we've got others like Hamish we're waiting on Hamish coming back to us, Robbie McIntosh coming back to us, and a good few others as well. There's going to be some more surprises. So, yeah, there's lots of good stuff coming up for the year. And I'm not worried about making money from it. I don't want to lose money. You know, I just love to bring great live music to people.
Yeah.
And along with places like the Hot Box, where I've put on my first show there, they want me to do about one a month where I can put on acts that I used to maybe put on at the basement and that as well. But they are a great independent venue as well. And I think it needs people like us, but we also need people buying tickets in advance for some of these shows, because sadly a lot of these bands need to be paid because it's the way they make a living. And without people pre-booking and that, we can't anticipate who's going to walk up on the day. And it's usually cheaper to pre-book anyway.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So yeah, the same as it is for a lot of us venues.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you're doing all this, especially after the dark days of COVID, where it, you know, all stopped, and you know, it is, the live music is flourishing again, which is great. And you know, there are venues that have closed down and are closing down, but you know, you seem to be going from strength to strength, which is a good thing. Yeah.
Well, during the lockdown, I sat here and I thought, I need to get some people together to entertain some people stuck here in this room where I am now.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'll call round a few people and see if they're interested in doing a live stream thing, which I controlled from where I am now.
Yeah.
And that ended up going on for 12 weeks and 195 acts we put on. I mean, the biggest one was Hazel O'Connor, who I taught to use her iPhone to stream with.
Yeah.
And she, from a little cottage in Ireland, it was the 40th anniversary of her Breaking Glass album.
Right.
She had her producer and friend on an upright piano, another friend on a cajon, and her just singing with a heart and using a bit of harmonica.
Yeah.
And the guy on the piano, when they did Will You, which has a great sax solo, had to go out into the hall so it wasn't too loud to play the sax.
Yeah.
And we had over 80,000 people watch that.
That's great. Yeah.
Around the globe. But we had I got people like Carole King's daughter. I had people in Australia playing, Sweden, Thailand. Robbie McIntosh, we had over 30,000 people. People go, no, you're the best guitarist McCartney ever had. You're the best guitarist John Mayer ever had. And that, you know, so it was great, you know, being able to put this on. I didn't charge at all, and we had donations. People could gift the musicians a donation and that, you know, because they weren't earning any money and they still needed to live.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I just can't stop.
No, I mean, yeah, you know, if you're approaching 70 and you're still going strong, but everyone seems to be a little bit younger than that for their age than they were, say, 20, 30 years ago, as you mentioned with your parents and that. So why not keep going? Because there's so many musicians now in their 70s who are still happily playing. And think of the Rolling Stones as well, you know. So, yeah, it's great.
Well, Chris Farlow, who played for me, I mean, Chris is about 82, the same as Albert Lee is.
Yeah.
You know, they're in their 80s, and there ain't no stopping them.
No.
Eric Bell's in his mid-70s and that, you know. We just keep on keeping on.
So, well, I'm going to have to finish it off now, but just to sum up, what's the email, the website address for your shows and things like that, so people want to come along?
The best place to go to is our Linktree link, because that has links to all the pages. I would say the Facebook page is the best place to go to from there. And if you go to www.linktr.ee/Black Frog Presents, all as one word, you will find us. If you can't find us there, go and look for our website, which is all the W's, blackfrogpresents.com.
Right. Okay, so hopefully, we'll get a few more people coming along to your gigs, and thank you for doing this interview and for telling us about your life and your music and all the different people you work with. But it's been very interesting. So thank you very much,
Mark.
Nick. Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thanks very much.